You know that feeling? You're standing in your kitchen. In your hand is a half-empty tube of ant bait. You squeeze it out, place it neatly right on the ant trail, and you wait. Then the next morning, you walk into the kitchen and the ants are still there, still marching in a line, still acting like your bait is just a puddle of water spilled on the floor. I know that feeling. I lived in that feeling for the entire summer of 2010. That year, Alex Carter, burned exactly $427 on ant bait tubes. I bought everything: Taro, Combat, Raid, those little round white plastic traps the ads said would just work. I placed them everywhere: in the kitchen, in the bathroom, behind the fridge, under the sink. And those fat little ants still ate my cookies like I had just opened an all-you-can-eat buffet. I wanted to punch the wall, but then I realized something. I'm not smarter than the ants. They're not stupid enemies. They're creatures programmed to survive through hundreds of millions of years of evolution. The problem wasn't that the bait was low quality. The problem was I was serving steak to a kid who was craving candy, and vice versa. In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how to read them. No new chemicals, no calling an exterminator, just a kitchen test with things you already have: honey and a piece of deli meat. We're going to make the ants confess what they want. And then I'll tell you exactly which bait tube to buy on Amazon tonight. Before you spend another penny on ant bait tubes, I want you to do something. Pause this video, stand up, walk into your kitchen. I'm serious. Pause it. I'll wait. All right, you're back. Or maybe you're the type who doesn't like being told what to do. I respect that. But here's why I want you in the kitchen. I'm about to turn you into a detective, and your evidence is sitting in your pantry. This is the test I call the menu interrogation. It's free. It takes 10 minutes. And it's going to save you from the mistake I made in the summer of 2010 when I squeezed Advion ant gel all over my counter and watched pharaoh ants ignore it like I just offered them cold cabbage soup. You need two things, just two, and both are in your kitchen right now. Number one, a spoonful of pure honey. I emphasize pure, not the corn syrup fake honey in the bear-shaped bottle. Ants can tell the difference. They're far more sophisticated than you think. Number two, a tiny piece of bacon, thumbnail-sized, or a bit of deli ham, pate, even wet cat food if you have a cat. Something with protein smell, with fat smell. Now find the ant trail, that long wavy line they make from the wall base to the kitchen counter. Place the honey and bacon next to each other, about 2 centimeters off the trail. Don't block their path, just place them beside it like two menus at a buffet restaurant. Then step back, make some coffee, wait 10 minutes. While you wait, a quick note: make sure these bait samples are out of reach of kids and pets. My dog Gus would lick the honey clean in 3 seconds if I wasn't watching. Now here's where the science kicks in. Ants are not random eaters. They are nutritional machines programmed by the seasons. And this is based on research by Dr. Dusutor and Simpson, published in the journal Animal Behavior in 2009. They discovered that ant colonies change their food preferences based on their brood cycle. When the queen isn't laying eggs, usually late fall and early winter, the colony needs energy to run the nest. They crave sugar. Sugar is instant fuel. The enzyme invertase in their gut breaks down sucrose into glucose and fructose, an energy punch for the worker ants on patrol. But when the queen lays eggs and larvae start demanding food, usually spring and summer, everything changes. Larvae need protein to grow. They need amino acids from meat, from dead insects, from any protein source, and the whole colony switches to hunting mode. The worker ants start producing the enzyme protease to digest protein instead of sugar. This is why the bait you bought last month worked like magic, but this month it's as useless as an umbrella in a submarine. The bait didn't go bad. The ants didn't develop resistance. You're just serving steak to a kid craving candy. Or the other way around. Back to your test. After 10 minutes, you'll see one of 3 scenarios. Scenario A, the ants swarm the honey like they just survived a famine, and they ignore the bacon like it's a decoration piece. Congratulations, you're dealing with the sugar team. They need energy. They need Advion or Taro. I'll talk about both in the next chapter. Scenario B, they rush the bacon and carry little pieces back to the nest like tiny weightlifters. You're dealing with the protein team. They're raising babies. And Maxforce Complete Granular is the answer. Chapter 3 will explain in detail. Scenario C, they eat both. I'm not lying, this is the most formidable situation. Either you have a super adaptive colony in seasonal transition, or worse, you have 2 different ant species in your house. Don't panic. Chapter 4 will teach you how to handle this without turning your kitchen into a chaotic stock exchange floor. But before I talk about specific baits, one warning: don't mess up this step. If you use fake honey, the kind cut with corn syrup, the ants might not recognize it. Different scent, different sugar ratio, and the scout ants will report back to the nest that there's nothing of value here. Similarly, if you use seasoned bacon with salt, pepper, paprika, garlic, you'll repel them instead of attracting them. Ants hate strong plant essential oils. That's a lesson I learned after accidentally turning my test station into a no-fly zone. Alright, now you have your test results, you know what your ants want. Next, we're talking about the sugar team. Which bait kills them fastest without scaring them off? And why did I once almost burn my house down because of a tube of taro liquid? Don't go anywhere. If your ants lunged at the honey like they just survived a famine, welcome to the sugar team. This is good news. Seriously. Sugar ants are the most common type you'll encounter in your kitchen in the US. The usual culprit is the Argentine ant Linepithema humel, the tiny brown ant that forms trails stretching for kilometers along the California coast and across the south. They're hardcore sugar addicts, and they have a superpower that makes them easier to kill than you think. That superpower is in their gut, the enzyme invertase. When Argentine ants eat sugar, sucrose, table sugar, the stuff you put in your morning coffee, their bodies release invertase to break sucrose into glucose and fructose. This is instant energy, like you drinking a can of Red Bull. This energy powers their patrols, their foraging, and most importantly, sharing food mouth to mouth with their colony. And that is their fatal weakness, because sugar ants don't just eat for themselves. They're loyal delivery workers. Every worker ant you see crawling on your counter will carry food back to the nest, and through a behavior called trophallaxis, I call it the kiss of death, they share the liquid in their stomachs with dozens of others. The queen, the larvae, the soldier ants, the young workers, all eating from the same source. That's why sugar ant bait works. You don't need to find the nest. You don't need to break walls. You just need to serve a buffet that the ants will voluntarily carry home. But the question is, which buffet? There are two sugar baits I trust after 15 years of testing, and they work completely differently. The first, taro liquid ant baits. Taro is liquid. Its active ingredient is borax sodium tetraborate mixed with sugar. It works like a credit destroyer. Borax doesn't kill ants by poisoning their nerves. Borax doesn't kill ants by poisoning their nerves. It accumulates in the gut, destroys the stomach lining, and makes the ant unable to digest food. It slowly starves to death over 2 to 3 days while still sharing the poison with its colony. Taro kills faster than most other baits. You'll see results within 24 to 48 hours, but it has one downside. Sometimes worker ants die right at the bait station. You walk into the kitchen in the morning and see a pile of dead ants next to the bait drop. This can trigger the colony's defense mechanism. Other ants see dead comrades and start suspecting something's wrong with this restaurant. I've seen this happen. In the summer of 2019, I placed taro in a Phoenix apartment kitchen. Day 1, hundreds of ants swarmed in. Day 2, half of them were dead right on the spot. Day 3, the remaining ants walked around the bait station like it was a graveyard. I had to clean everything, set up a new station elsewhere, and it took 3 more days to finish them off. Don't get me wrong, taro is still a good product. It's cheap, about $6 a bottle, and available at every hardware store. But you have to know how to use it. The second, Advion ant gel. This is my heavy weapon for the sugar team. Advion uses indoxacarb, a neurotoxin designed to delay death. That's the key. Research by Buczkowski and Schall in the Journal of Economic Entomology in 2001 showed that indoxacarb needs at least 24 to 36 hours to kill an ant. During that window, the ant stays healthy, keeps moving, keeps engaging in trophallaxis, and every time it shares food, it shares the poison. Advion kills slower than taro, 48 to 72 hours. But it's cleaner. You won't see dead ants in your kitchen. They die inside the nest. And that's what you want. A 4-tube pack of Advion ant gel costs about $28 on Amazon. Sounds like a lot, but one tube lasts 6 to 8 months if stored properly. Compared to buying cheap, ineffective bait tubes over and over, this is a bargain. Now, whether you choose taro or Advion, there's one golden rule for bait placement. Don't place one big drop, place 5 small drops. I tested this. Same ant trail, same bait. One big coin-sized drop versus 5 small drops scattered along the trail. Result, the 5 small drops attracted 3 times as many ants. Why? Because when a scout ant finds a food source, it returns to the nest and recruits reinforcements. If it finds one big drop, it reports, there's one source. But if it finds multiple scattered drops, it reports, there's a whole party here. The recruitment pheromone is stronger. The entire colony gets mobilized. And when you see hundreds of ants swarming the 5 drops you just placed, don't panic. This is the most important part. I want you to remember this. Seeing more ants after placing bait is a good sign. It doesn't mean the bait isn't working. It means the bait is working perfectly. The ants are calling their friends to the party. They're doing the delivery work for you. The worst thing you can do right now is spray insecticide on them, or wipe the trail with glass cleaner, or panic and seal up wall cracks. I'll talk about the horrific consequences of doing that in Chapter 5. But for now, trust me, leave them alone. You're watching their farewell party. And now, if your ants ignored the honey and instead carried bacon away like tiny weightlifters, you've got a bigger problem. You don't have the sugar team. You have the protein team, and Maxforce Complete Granular is the answer. I'll explain in the next chapter. I used to think Advion was the holy grail. Seriously. Every year I kept a tube in my kitchen cabinet. I treated it like Thor's hammer, one swing, and the ants would vanish. Then in May of 2024, I met a colony of pharaoh ants in a humid apartment in Orlando that taught me a humiliating lesson. I squeezed out Advion. The ants approached. One scout touched its antennae to the gel drop and turned away. The entire colony followed. They ignored my bait station like I'd just offered them boiled vegetables at a barbecue party. I spent the next 3 days watching pharaoh ants crawl around the kitchen, eating cat food crumbs while my Advion tube sat there like a useless rock. That's when I learned the lesson of the protein team. If in the 10-minute test from Chapter 1, your ants ignored the honey and lunged at the bacon, or the cat food, or the pâté, or anything with protein smell, you're dealing with a completely different situation. Your ants don't crave sugar, they crave meat, and there's an extremely specific biological reason for this. When the queen lays eggs and larvae hatch, the entire colony switches to parenting mode. Ant larvae can't digest solid food on their own. They need amino acids from protein to build their bodies to molt to become adult worker ants. And those older worker ants, the ones you see crawling on your counter, they're programmed to hunt meat. The enzyme protease in their gut gets activated instead of invertase. They don't need instant energy like the sugar team. They need building materials for the next generation. In the US and Europe, the most common protein team culprits are pharaoh ants, Monomorium farionis, those super tiny pale yellow ants, and ghost ants, Tapenoma melanosphalum, the ones with dark heads and transparent bodies like little ghosts. Both species are multi-queen reproductive machines. One nest can have dozens of queens, and when they're laying, the whole colony goes into a protein-craving frenzy. This is where sugar baits fail miserably, and this is where you need a different weapon. I recommend Maxforce Complete Granular. Maxforce comes in small yellow granules with a liver-like smell. Sounds terrible to you, but to a pharaoh ant colony raising larvae, it's treasure. The active ingredient is hydromethylnin, a mitochondrial toxin. It blocks the ant cells from producing energy. Ants that eat it die slowly over 2 to 3 days, long enough to share the bait granules with the entire colony through trophallaxis, but without leaving dead bodies in your kitchen. Using Maxforce is different from gel baits. You don't squeeze it in drops, you sprinkle a few granules, I emphasize just a few along the ant trail. Don't make piles. Pharaoh ants are picky and a big pile will make them suspicious. Sprinkle it thin like sprinkling pepper on a fried egg. A bottle of Maxforce Complete Granular costs about $15 on Amazon. It lasts 3 to 4 months. For protein ant outbreaks, I haven't found anything better in 15 years. There's a second option, Advanced 375A, also granular, but it uses abamectin, a derivative from soil bacteria that affects the ant's nervous system. Advanced 375A is especially effective against ghost ants. If you're in the southern US or humid parts of Europe and see ants with dark heads and transparent bodies crawling in your kitchen, Advanced 375A is my recommendation. But now I need to warn you about something. And this is something I learned from painful mistakes. Never make homemade protein bait. I know what you're thinking. Alex, I've got boric acid, I've got pâté, I'll mix my own. I tried. In 2021, I mixed boric acid with peanut butter and placed it in my kitchen. Day 1, ants came. Day 2, the peanut butter went rancid and grew a layer of white mold. Day 3, the ants avoided my bait station like a toxic waste dump. Homemade protein bait spoils too fast. Within 24 hours in humid environments, it starts fermenting and growing bacteria. And ants can detect spoiled food far better than you can. They won't touch it. If you need to kill protein ants, buy Maxforce or Advion. Don't DIY. $15 for a bottle of Maxforce is way cheaper than 3 weeks of failure and a spreading ant infestation. Now there's one more scenario, and it's the scariest one. What happens if your ants eat both honey and bacon? Don't celebrate yet. It means you might be dealing with a superadaptive species, or worse, 2 different ant species in the same house. And if you put down both types of bait at the same time, you'll create a disaster I call the signal chaos buffet. I'll explain how to handle this in the next chapter. Alright, you've done the detective test. You've identified whether you need Advion for the sugar team or Maxforce for the protein team. You've ordered on Amazon, or you've run to the nearest hardware store. Now you're holding the bait. Stop for a second. Where you place the bait matters just as much as which bait you chose. I've seen too many people buy the right product but place it in the wrong spot, then go online and leave 1-star reviews saying this product doesn't work. It works, you just put it somewhere the ants will never find. In 2017, I did a little experiment. I had an Argentine ant trail running from a kitchen wall crack to Gus's food bowl, my golden retriever. I placed one Advion station right on the trail, and I placed another station, same Advion, same amount, about 15 centimeters off the trail, hidden behind a salt shaker on the counter. The first station had over 200 ants visit in the first 2 hours. The second station had exactly 3 ants, 3 lost ants looking like tourists without a map. Here's why: ants don't use their eyes to find food. They follow a chemical map, trail pheromones. Every time a scout ant finds food, it drags its abdomen on the ground on the way back to the nest, leaving an invisible chemical trail called a trail pheromone. Other worker ants follow this trail like a highway. That's why you see them marching in long lines. They're not queuing up out of discipline. They're clinging to a chemical rope. If you place your bait station even 15 centimeters off the trail, you've put it in a dead zone. The ants won't see it. They won't smell it from a distance, not like we imagine. They only detect food when a scout happens to touch it while patrolling, and if no scout touches it, the entire colony will never know it exists. So rule number 1, place bait directly on the trail. Not near the trail, not beside the trail, on the trail. Block their path with a drop of gel or a few granules, but that's just step 1. If you want to truly optimize, use the 3-point strategic station system I developed after years of testing. Point A, right at the nest entrance, if you know where the nest is. That wall crack, that baseboard gap, that windowsill crevice. This is the first interception point. Ants step out of their house and see a free breakfast. Point B, in the middle of the trail. This is the easiest one. Any ant commuting to work will stop. Point C, at the fork where the trail branches. Ants always send scouts to forks to explore new directions. Placing bait at point C means you're intercepting their exploration team. According to research by Dr. Morgan published in Chemical Society Reviews in 2009, we know that scout ants prioritize exploring intersections over straight paths, because in nature, forks are often where dead insects lie, a valuable protein source. 3 points, 3 stations, same bait type, don't mix. And this is where I need to shout a warning. Never, I emphasize, never place 2 different bait types in the same area. I've seen this dozens of times in the comments on my channel. Alex, I put down Taro and Advion and Maxforce all at the same time and the ants are still here. Of course they're still here. You just created what I call the signal chaos buffet. When you place 3 different baits close together, each has a different scent, a different attractant. A scout ant arrives, tastes dish A, and leaves a pheromone trail for dish A. But dish B and C have different smells, drowning out the trail for dish A. The worker ants follow the trail, arrive, find 3 strange smells mixed together, and their reaction is, not safe, retreat. You just turned your bait station into a chaotic stock exchange floor, and the ants, they're extremely conservative investors, will pull their capital immediately. If you have 2 different baits because you're unsure whether you're dealing with sugar or protein team, do the 10-minute test in Chapter 1. But if you still want to use both, place them at least 3 meters apart. 1 in the kitchen, 1 in the bathroom. Never side by side. And now there's a mistake even bigger than placing bait in the wrong spot. A mistake your own instincts will push you to make. And if you make it, you'll destroy your entire campaign in 10 seconds. That's the topic of the final chapter. The 3-day silence rule. This is the most painful part of the entire process. I'm not joking. This part will go against every instinct you have. Every fiber in your body will scream, "Do something, Alex," and I'm telling you, don't do anything, do nothing at all. This is the 3-day silence rule, and it's the line between success and failure in ant baiting. Let me tell you a story. In 2018, I had a client, let's call him Dave. Dave called me in a panic. "Alex, I put down those Advion drops like you said, and now there are hundreds of ants in my kitchen, more than before I put the bait down. I sprayed all those ants and wiped the trail with glass cleaner, but they keep coming back." I almost cried right there on the phone. Dave had just destroyed his entire campaign, because what he saw wasn't a sign of failure, it was a sign of spectacular success. Remember the trophallaxis mechanism I talked about in Chapter 2, the kiss of death? The research by Buxkowski and Schall in 2001 proved that indoxacarb in Advion needs at least 24 to 36 hours to kill an ant. During that window, the worker ant isn't just eating bait, it's going back to the nest and recruiting more comrades. It's telling the whole colony, "I found treasure, follow me." That's why you see more ants on day 2. It doesn't mean the bait isn't working, it means the bait is working too well. The whole colony is being invited to the farewell party. And when Dave sprayed insecticide on the ants attending the party, he didn't just kill a few worker ants. He triggered one of the most terrifying survival mechanisms in the insect world. It's called budding. With multi-queen ant species like pharaoh ants or ghost ants, when the colony senses a threat like a lethal contact chemical spray, they don't fight. They don't scatter chaotically. They execute an organized evacuation. Each group of worker ants grabs a queen and runs in different directions. One original ant colony in your kitchen wall crack now becomes 3 colonies, one in the bathroom, one behind the fridge, one inside an electrical outlet. Research by Oy and Williams from the United States Department of Agriculture in 2003 documented this phenomenon. A pharaoh ant colony sprayed with contact insecticide can fragment into multiple colonies within just 24 hours. You just turned a small problem into a whole house disaster. So here is the 3-day silence rule. Write it down, tape it to your fridge. After placing bait for the next 72 hours, do not spray any insecticide. Do not wipe the ant trail, not with glass cleaner, not with vinegar, not with soap. You'll erase the map leading to your bait station. Do not seal the nest entrance. Let them come and go freely. That's the only 2-way road for the poison to travel from your kitchen into the heart of the colony. Day 1, you'll see ants coming to eat, possibly quite a lot. Day 2, possibly even more. This is the peak of the party. Day 3, you'll see noticeably fewer ants. They'll move slower with less organization. By day 4, the trail usually disappears completely. At this point, the old bait drop has dried out or molded. As I mentioned in earlier chapters, dry bait is trash. Wipe it clean. Now you have permission to clean. Wipe everything, dead ants if any, old pheromone trails, and the bait drop that's completed its mission. If after 4 days you still see ants, that's not a sign of total failure. The nest might be too large and needs another round of bait. Repeat the process. New station, 3 days of silence. But this time, try placing it in a different spot closer to point A, nearer to the nest. Follow the 3-day silence rule and you'll watch them disappear. But wait. There's one thing that even the right bait, the right placement, and 3 days of silence can't save you from if you mess it up. A mistake involving safety with your kids, with your pets, and with your own health. I'm going to talk about that right now. Alright, I need to talk about safety. And I need you to listen seriously for a few minutes. I've spent 15 years testing everything in my own home, a home with kids, with pets, with people who can't tell the difference between ant bait and pancake syrup. I've made enough mistakes to write a book. Here are the 3 most important warnings. Warning number 1, Bitrex in pets, bitter but not a perfect shield. In 2022, I was placing Advion in the kitchen. I turned my back for exactly 2 seconds. My golden retriever Gus seized the opportunity. He licked the drop of honey brown gel I just squeezed out. My heart stopped for a second, but then a miracle happened. Gus made a face. He drooled. He backed up and looked at me like I'd just betrayed him. Bitrex, the bitterest substance in the world added to commercial baits, worked. No poisoning symptoms followed. I called the vet. Gus was completely fine, but here's what I need to emphasize. Bitrex is a shield, not a safe. A hungry enough dog or a curious enough child can still swallow enough bait to cause harm. especially liquid baits like taro, which smell sweet and lack Bitrex in some older formulas. My rule: always place bait stations in hidden spots behind the fridge, under the kitchen cabinet toe kick, inside a plastic protective box with tiny holes for ants to enter. If you have children under 3 or pets that lick everything off the floor, invest in lockable bait stations. They cost a few dollars on Amazon, much cheaper than a midnight emergency room visit. Warning number 2, the budding danger: the worst thing you can do with pharaoh ants and ghost ants. I talked about budding in the previous chapter, but I need to repeat it here because it directly relates to your home's safety. If you see very tiny ants, pale yellow like diluted honey, or black-headed with transparent bodies like little ghosts, you might be dealing with pharaoh ants or ghost ants. These are the 2 most dangerous species for DIYers, not because they bite hard or carry disease, but because they have the superpower of fragmentation when threatened. I've seen a client turn one pharaoh ant colony in the kitchen into 4 colonies spreading throughout the house in a single night. His weapon: a can of Raid from the convenience store. Research by Oy and Williams from the USDA proved that contact chemicals, especially the pyrethroid family like permethrin, cypermethrin, trigger an alarm dispersal mechanism in multi-queen ants. Queens are protected by workers and evacuated in multiple directions. Each splinter group can establish a new colony. That's why I always say, if you suspect pharaoh ants or ghost ants, never spray contact insecticide. Only use baits, and if bait doesn't work after 2 rounds, call a professional. There are times when calling a pro isn't failure, it's strategy. Warning number 3, homemade baits and the concentration mistake. I gave you the homemade sugar bait formula with 1% boric acid. This is the safe and effective concentration based on Dr. Klotz's research published in Sociobiology, but I know how some of you will think. Alex said 1%, so 5% must be 5 times stronger. No, stop. Boric acid concentrations above 2 to 3% will taste bitter and salty, which ants can detect. They'll avoid it immediately. You just wasted time mixing up something the ants consider toxic trash. And more dangerously, if your child or pet drinks a 5% solution, that's a serious medical issue. Boric acid is safe at low concentrations. It was once used as eye drops, but at high concentrations, it causes stomach irritation, vomiting, and kidney damage. If you mix homemade bait, label it clearly. Ant bait, do not drink. Don't leave it in a drinking glass. Don't leave it in a soda bottle. Imagine your child reaching for a glass of clear sugar water on the kitchen counter. That cannot be allowed to happen. All the methods I taught today, the detective test, choosing bait by team, the 3-point station placement, the 3-day silence rule, they work in the vast majority of cases. But there are situations beyond the reach of DIY. If the ant nest is in the concrete foundation of your house, if you've tried 2 rounds of the right bait, right placement, full 3-day silence and still see ants. If you discover you're dealing with carpenter ants, the kind that bore through wood and can cause structural damage to your home, at those times, calling a professional isn't failure. It's the act of a smart person who knows their limits. But at least when you call the pro, you'll call as an informed person. You'll know what kind of bait they're using. You'll know if they're spraying contact chemicals on a pharaoh ant colony, and you'll know to ask them, are you sure that won't cause budding? Knowledge is power, and now you have it. And now, before you leave, let me show you the numbers. You'll be surprised how much money you save compared to calling an exterminator. Before I wrap up, let's talk money. Because I know you're thinking, Alex, are these bait tubes really worth it? Let's do some quick math. A 4-tube pack of Advion ant gel, $28 on Amazon. A bottle of Maxforce Complete Granular, $15. Total, $43 for both weapons, enough to last 6 to 8 months, depending on the severity of your ant invasion. Now compare that to calling a professional exterminator. One visit, $150 to $300, and most companies require contracts for 2 to 3 visits a year. Total cost, $300 to $900 per year. My Orlando apartment last May, I spent $15 on Maxforce. My neighbor hired a $200 service. Both of us were ant-free after 5 days. The difference wasn't in the result. The difference was I had an extra $185 in my pocket. And more importantly, I understood why I succeeded. So next time there are ants, I don't need to call anyone. I just open my kitchen cabinet, grab the right bait tube, and deal with it in 10 minutes. That's the difference between hiring someone to solve your problem and becoming the problem solver yourself. But saving money is only half the story. The other half is something money can't buy, the peace of mind knowing you've taken control. Let me tell you about that. We've come a long way in the last 17 minutes. Let's look back at what you've just learned. You learned how to interrogate ants with honey and bacon, a free 10-minute test that most people never do, and then they wonder why their bait doesn't work. You learned the difference between the sugar team and the protein team, and why serving the wrong menu is the #1 reason bait fails. You learned how to place bait stations using the 3-point strategic system, how to follow the 3-day silence rule, and how to avoid the budding disaster with pharaoh ants. This is my philosophy. You don't beat insects by killing them one by one. You beat them by turning your home into a place where they can't communicate, can't reproduce, and can't find food. Today you've got the first layer of defense in your hands. But this is just the first layer. There are deeper things I can't cram into a 17-minute video. How to precisely identify the ant species you're dealing with, not just sugar or protein, but the 12 most common species in the U.S. and Europe, each with a unique weakness. How to handle ant nests inside walls without breaking them open. And the 4-season defense system, the thing that will keep your home ant-free all year round, not just during this outbreak. I've packed all of that into a free PDF, the 10-minute ant ID guide. Inside are close-up photos of the 12 most common ant species, matched with the exact bait for each, and placement diagrams for every home type: apartment, townhouse, house with a yard. The download link is below this video. Completely free. And if you want to go even deeper, I have an ebook called The Fortress Commander's Handbook, a battle-tested, science-backed protocol to eliminate household ants forever, without toxic chemical sprays, structural damage, or paying $300 to pest control companies. It costs $14.99, I know, not free, but it's cheaper than a tube of bait you buy by mistake, and it's a lot cheaper than a call to the exterminator. Link is also below. While you're waiting for the PDF to download, watch my next video, How to Deal with Rove Beetles. This is the insect that, if you crush it on your skin, its toxin causes a chemical burn worse than vinegar. I'll teach you how to identify and handle them without ever touching them. I'm Alex Carter from Pest Free Gone, wishing you a peaceful home. And remember, don't spray the ants at their farewell party. Let them party. It's